Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to walk away or skate away from it all and live a different way or chase your dreams no matter what, then do we have the freedom-seeking Say Yes show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dave Cornthwaite, professional adventurer, freedom seeker, and author of 3 books, including Life in the Slow Lane, A Patient Quest for Adventure. And that's what we'll talk about today, about saying yes to life, taking adventures, and looking in the world a completely different, more empowered way. That plus we'll talk about skateboarding Australia, Priscilla the bike car, Fred the frog, world record egg crushing, between your toes that is, the power of Nutella, how we all want is sperm, and why breaking your foot might just be the greatest gift in the world. So welcome to the show, Dave. Are you ready to shine?
I'm totally ready. I don't know how we're going to fit all of that into 50 minutes, though.
You'd be surprised. And a mighty woohoo! All right. So before we dive right into things, I've got to ask the question that's on everybody's mind, maybe. Just how bad of a graphic designer were you?
Oh, my God. Horrible. Totally awful graphic design. I don't know why anybody paid me to do that job. I taught myself. And I still don't look back at anything I ever created in those 3 years as being worthwhile. That bad.
Wow. But now you had, and this got me for a while, and it's not a bad thing, but it warped my brain a little bit. You had a mortgage at the time.
Yeah, I had a mortgage. Do you want me to add to that?
Yes, go for it.
Figures. In fact, I think it's almost like I left school and I had a year out and I went traveling and, I did all that stuff that I guess a lot of kids, especially in the UK, do. We've got this gap year thing in the UK and I loved my freedom. It was an amazing feeling and I lost it. I lost it because of this lure and seduction of money and a job. And actually, I got the mortgage before that naughty seduction came into my life and kind of turned me into someone very boring for a while. And I actually went in to a bank. I was at university for my first year. I went into a bank and just got a mortgage. I lied to them. I said, I've got a job. I've got a regular income. I found a house. It was very cheap. It was only £40,000, which back then was worth about maybe $60,000, $70,000. Now it's, less. And they gave me it. So I had a house for 6 years. It wasn't very expensive. It's almost like buying a shed in London now. And so I did have a mortgage, although it definitely wasn't the kind of mortgage that was really going to set me back financially. Mm-hmm. If I got one now, I'd be destroyed for life.
Now, and I believe for everybody out there, I'm not suggesting you don't buy property. In fact, it's a great thing to do, but you have to have kind of your mind in the right headspace. For me, it was hard to be open to possibilities when my sole goal was protecting the roof over my head.
Yeah. And I think that's a very natural thing. Shelter is obviously one of the main factors that we need to satisfy as humans. But at the same time, that can come in so many different shapes and sizes. And when you're used to just having one form of shelter, when you've got a home, especially if you've got to pay for it, especially if you have dependents, which luckily I didn't, luckily for the sake of freedom, then it does become almost all-consuming. It's hard to think out of that box that you've created for yourself. So it's pretty natural that becomes a tether or a trap for some people.
So at that time, you had a girlfriend, you had a cat, you had a home, and you had depression. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and I had obviously the graphic design job, which was a large source of the depression.
So what happened around your birthday at 25?
I woke up on this, gloriously rounded birthday, quarter century, and my cat Kiwa was on my chest with big paws, kneading my chest for food. And I remember looking at her thinking, okay, this is 25, this is big, this is a lovely number. What have I done for 25 years? And what am I going to do for the next 25? And then I looked into Kiwa's big eyes and I just realized she was about to have a lovely day. I hadn't booked a day off. I was going to go into work. And I realized she was just going to be much happier than I was that day. And that was a pretty regular thing. And it didn't seem fair. I started to think about all the potential I had as a human. You know, it was a pretty deep conversation to have with your pussycat when you're that young. But from that, you know, this brewing began. And I'm English, so I have to use a tea analogy. And it took me a while. It took me a few months just to slowly work my head around what was going on. And yeah, the cat was really the one thing that I loved out of the girlfriend, out of the house, out of the job, out of my life. And when that's the case, and yet there's so much other stuff that should be important, but yet you're still attached to, something really seriously needs to change. And I think the one thing that I was doing on such a regular basis that summed up this entire predicament was I said no. A huge amount. I lived really close to some beautiful surfing beaches, and I went surfing once in 6 years. The girlfriend and I had gone completely stale. We spent most of the time when we were in the same house in different rooms. I hated going to work. I hated that Sunday feeling of, I've got 5 days of going in there. I had the same feeling when I was at school. And all of this just compounded. So it all came from that one morning, that one conversation with a cat, and I realized that, man, if I carry on living this life, then I'm going to look back at some point and wish that I lived a different one.
So I guess the most important question that I have to ask then is, how is the cat?
Yeah. The cat's lovely. She's very round and fat. I haven't seen her for a few years, I'll be honest, but she's living in the countryside in rural England with one of my best friend's sisters.
Yay.
Yeah, she's still with us.
So very, very good. So and that was you have a beautiful talk online, and I'm going, what happened to the cat? Gotta know what happened to Kiwal. So you did a snowboarding trip, you came back, maybe the girlfriend left soon thereafter, you started skateboarding to get ready for your next snowboarding trip. I'm sure I'm butchering this timeline, and then somehow you ended up skateboarding to work?
Yeah, exactly. I guess I wanted to start in that period of 6 months after waking up at 25. I started to assess what was wrong. I realized that in a few years, even then, if I was invited out to dinner or a drink, I just didn't have anything to talk about. So I felt like I wanted to create more things in my life, make myself more of an interesting guy. And then eventually I thought, okay, if we're going to work out, me and the girl at the time, then we need to start doing some new things. We need to start saying yes more. So we went snowboarding, loved it. It didn't help the relationship, though. That broke up a week later. But I lived in Swansea in South Wales, where there's no snow. But I wanted to improve this newfound skill on a board. So I got myself a long skateboard, the first skateboard I'd ever ridden. And I just rode around for 2 weeks, solid. I didn't play PlayStation. I had an awful PlayStation habit. And yeah, I felt happier. I felt fitter. I felt more healthy. I was outside more. And what's more, the view of this town that I'd lived in for so long completely changed in a fortnight because I was seeing it from a different angle. You know, downhills meant something suddenly, and smooth surfaces as well. I became a connoisseur. So I skated into work 2 weeks after stepping onto that board, and I quit.
What I don't know if snap's the right word, but we'll use that. We'll go with that. What snapped as you're skating along that's going, this is it. I have got to find a different way?
I think so. There were a series of moments and realizations that eventually led to this crossroads. And I think now and then, as humans, we enjoy or sometimes don't, but we exist through these sweeping arcs. We go through lots of different phases as certainly adults, where we're in a position where one decision changes everything, and sometimes you make the wrong decision and everything stays on a plateau or even goes downhill. And for me, I felt like this crossroads was approaching for about 6 months since I'd woken up with a cat, and I just knew I needed to do something new. And then over these 2 weeks as I was skating around, I felt this surge of passion like I hadn't felt for a long, long time, mainly because I hadn't done anything new. I hadn't discovered anything as a result. that just made me tick, that made me smile and beam. And therefore, if you see anyone walking around smiling, you want to talk to them. You know, you feel like, what's your secret? You know, give me that. Their eyes are shining and everything. And suddenly I was just a new guy because I had all this, you know, the sunshine and the fitness, and I was rolling around and I was enjoying going down the smallest hills. And I just thought, wouldn't it be amazing, having discovered all of the hills in Swansea, in my hometown, if I did a journey, if I traveled across an entire country? And I just thought, well, this is the time, you know, I need to prove myself here to myself more than anybody else. So what if I did something that no one else had ever done before? And here I am, just skating along in the very, you know, innocence of my skateboarding lifetime. And I thought, what's in the way of this? I don't have a partner anymore. She's gone. You know, the cat I could give to somebody. I love the little furry creature, but she could go. I could get rid of the house, not a problem, or someone could rent it. And all that was in the way was the job. And I skated into work, and I had an argument with the boss. And it came out of a couple of days earlier. I'd been at we'd gone out for some kind of team drinks with a client, and I'd said the wrong thing at some point, or just made a joke that the boss didn't like. It was very innocent. But the boss said, we could replace you like that. And he clicked his fingers right in my face. And I didn't like that at all. I've never been very good at being told what to do. And I just thought, you know what? I am not a person that you can just replace like that. Even though I was rubbish at my job, and he definitely could have replaced me. Even in my most down moments, I felt like I had more to give. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, you know what? I'm not going to spend time with anybody who treats me like that. So I just put my keys on the desk and said, okay, you're going to have to replace me. And I skated out. I got on my board and skated out of the building, which really annoyed him, obviously, but I didn't care anymore because he wasn't my boss. And I made myself a promise that, you know, I was going to skate further than anyone else had ever skated. Now I didn't have any issue. I didn't have anything blocking me. I didn't have anything else taking up my time. I'd saved a little bit of money, but I just thought, if I'm going to do something now, then now's the time. And that was that. I had never had any doubt. And the record at the time was 3,000 miles on a skateboard held by this American bloke called Jack Smith. And yeah, I just thought, you know what, if I can skateboard around Swansea Bay, then I can skate 3,000 miles or more. So the search was on. I started looking for a country with a big road across, and that was that.
So it's interesting because you once you got on the skateboard, and this is an interesting thing about all of your journeys, I find, is that you're never really prepared, for lack of another term, before your journeys. And we'll dive into how many there were in a little bit here. But that has actually served you well because you go in with childlike joy, enthusiasm, and new eyes. When you got on that skateboard, just like you're saying, you had an experience that, hill. First off, this means that some things are harder to get up, and others I have to concentrate on the braking to get down. You looked at the whole world from a completely different perspective.
Mm. Yeah, and a new one too. I think I definitely didn't have designs on making a career from adventure. I didn't even know such a thing existed or would exist for me when I started. All I wanted to do was do something new and have this big journey. And I felt like if I did that, then what would be. If I got to the end, if I made it 3,000 miles or more on my skateboard, then I'd just be a different bloke. You know, my attitude to life and the world around me would have changed from being a 10-hour-a-day PlayStation addict, just looking forward to the weekend kind of guy. And I didn't want to be that menial bloke. Everybody else was doing that, and there was more to me than that. I really felt that. So yeah, I just thought, right, let's just go. And I have taken that attitude into every single one of my trips. I don't train. I don't look at Google beyond just making a very rudimentary, okay, I'm probably going to go there and there and there. I don't go 3D. I don't research stuff. I don't know what I'm going to see. I don't care about landmarks or any of that stuff. I care about how I feel in any given situation. And I just wanted to talk to people along the way. And I wanted to travel in this weird way. I love this idea of traveling around on a skateboard because it was different. Even skating around Swansea, I was meeting people. So when I ended up skateboarding the length of the UK and then across Australia, man, people were like, what are you doing? You're traveling on a skateboard. How far are you going? And they couldn't wrap their head around, I'm just skating across your country. because even driving across town was a chore sometimes, and I love that. Just a simple decision. Okay, I'm going to take it slow, and I'm not going to learn about this place until I'm there, and therefore I can just enjoy it or not. If it's a big uphill, but so be it. You're not supposed to enjoy everything. If you enjoyed everything, then those highs wouldn't feel quite so beautiful. And I've taken those basic lessons that I've learned and definitely developed them over the last few years. But I love that. I think, as adults, and I'm sure you picked this up in Life in the Slow Lane as you were reading the book, that I try and retain this childlike enthusiasm for everything. That's not to mean I'm not mature. You naturally mature as you go through experiences and through life. And I have a very responsible side, but at the same time, I think it's to the detriment of human life that we become staid and boring and grumpy as we get older, because we're just weighed down by all the bad experiences that we have in life, and we don't hold on to the good ones that we have. And, why are the best moments that we had at school or when we were young, when we didn't have those responsibilities, when actually, when we're adults, we just have the freedom of more decisions. Mm-hmm. I think we're naturally happy, but we just make decisions that take away that happiness. And that's completely our choice. I just decided not to make those decisions anymore.
You also say that the last day that we're alive is the last day we learn or try something new. Mm. And I think you're living that.
I try as much as I can. I think definitely sometimes I slip up, and we all have our struggles and our periods where we're just working stuff out, because we're not the same person all of our lives. And suddenly you see a realization or you feel something new and you have to adapt. And I think success isn't about money or getting a great job or a good car or a big house. Success for me is that ability to adapt throughout life, whatever it throws at you. And the faster you can adapt, the more successful you be, because you don't waste time worrying. It's kind of that simple. And we're in a position now where, you can avoid saying, I wish I'd done that, or I wish that had happened, for the rest of your life. Every single decision you make now influences the rest of your life. Every single decision you make influences the next 10 or 20 minutes or 2 weeks. It doesn't really matter. But I think we're in a position where we can make decisions that don't ensure we're unhappy or miserable or boring or unrewarded or dissatisfied for the rest of our life. And as much as possible, I'm trying to ensure that the rest of my life is going to be quite fun.
I like that. Let's talk briefly about a few of your trips, specifically skating Australia. And I didn't read the book on this. What kind of logistics did you go into it with? And how, the question that I'm sure you've been asked 1,000 times, how did you not roast away in the desert?
That's one of the many questions. I guess just simply to paint the picture, I decided I wanted to break the world distance record on a skateboard as my first trip. I didn't have any experience in doing any kind of endurance or skating for that matter. So I decided to do a warm up and skated for 34 days and 896 miles, the length of Britain, a famous route from John O'Groats to Land's End, north to south. And then a couple of months later, in August 2006, I set off from Perth on the west coast of Australia and basically aimed for Brisbane all the way across the other side. I skated for 156 days, best part of 5 months. And I wanted to do more than just skate. I didn't want it just to be a selfish thing. Although I know now there's nothing wrong with being selfish whatsoever, especially if it's putting yourself through an ordeal or an experience that you hope will better you at some point. And at the same time, all be that, I wanted good for myself from this journey, but I also wanted to raise some money for some charities. And I figured at the end of a big day of skating, I'd be too tired to do that myself. So I convinced 7 people to drop sticks and come and join me. It just turned out to be this crazy caravan. There was a guy on a yellow skateboard whose complexion and hair color definitely didn't lend itself to being crossing one of the hottest countries in the world. And then 3 different vans, fundraising team and cameras and all of this stuff. And there we were, just crossing Australia in a very slow fashion. But I mean, it was an amazing, eye-opening journey for me in so many ways, and many of the journeys that I've completed since have been by myself, and largely because the experience of traveling with so many people means everything was slower than it needed to be. It rose up, all of those problems that you usually get when groups of people travel in intense conditions together for a long period of time. There were arguments and all of this drama. And really all I ever really wanted was to get up in the morning and just skate and have the purity of that enjoyable experience, however hard it was physically. But I made it. I got to the end, and I got a book deal afterwards. And I think, the answer to your question, I didn't burn so much because I put a lot of sun cream on. First thing I did, I only ever learned to skate pushing with one leg. So I had a really big right calf and a really big left thigh. Even to this day, whenever I buy some new jeans or shorts, after about 3 months, the belt has just moved around my hip by a few inches. So I walk with apparently a funny gait, although I don't think it's visible to the naked eye. But it was wonderful. I love that feeling of tipping over the hill and seeing that skyline, despite the fact that a couple of seconds later I fell for the only time on the journey at 40 kilometers an hour. I left some skin on that road in Brisbane, but crossing that finish line, I just thought, you know what, mate, you could do anything now. You made one decision and here you are. And a couple of minutes later, I got a call and I had a book deal and all of this crazy stuff happened. I didn't know what the rest of time looked like at all. I just felt that, you know what, you got to make the most of this from now on. And you definitely can't go back to working in an office and being unhappy anymore.
So you went from there, and if I understand correctly, you next went something with a little bit more solitude and more of a steady horizon, would we say? Definitely no hills to speak of. The Murray River in Australia? Yeah,
that was my next trip, although it took me 2.5 years from the end of the skateboarding journey, which was January 2007, to actually get my head around what I really wanted to do. In that period, I didn't work a great deal. I slept in pretty much every park in zones 1 to 3 in London. I went to the Big Smoke and just thought, I'm going to I'll speak at schools as much as I can for as long as it takes for me to be a good enough speaker where I feel like I can charge. I'll do lots of little silly projects and just get used to doing new things. And I lived really low. I didn't have any money coming in, really. I maybe earned £3,000 to £4,000 a year in that time.
How long was, I'm thinking of my bike ride across the country, and the landing out of any of these great endeavors, the landing is rougher than the journey.
Yeah.
How was your heart after that?
Everything was sore. My body was sore. My soul was sore. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I obviously kind of proved my determination in the process of skateboarding 6,000 kilometers, but I guess it came to show its real strength when I refused to go back and do a proper job like everybody else around me was, even though I desperately wanted that money and that security for a while. But I was lost. I think, whether you're doing a long work project or a long journey, especially, you get a post-project, a post-expedition depression, because every single day on a trip like that is just, it's full of beautiful color. It doesn't matter what you're going through that day. New stuff is happening. You're covering new ground. You're challenging yourself in different ways, overcoming hurdles, meeting new people, having conversations you've not had before, and you get a lot of thinking time on the road. And suddenly, when you hit the ground again after all of that, the world seems a bit grey. And it I guess the longer and the harder the journey, the longer it takes to decompress and then get back to whatever is your new median. So it took me maybe 6 months after the skateboarding to really start feeling like I was, pecker again. I'd been pretty low and naturally tired, and it's hormonal as well. It's because your body gets used to being in a certain rhythm, and it's not just a psychological thing. Your body is, why aren't you skateboarding anymore? Why aren't you as fit as you were? Why aren't you on and on? And it's interesting you asked that, because I experienced very similar after the Murray. It took me 2.5 years of gap. I decided that I missed that feeling of a long adventure. I loved how I felt as just as a solo human during that skateboard, and I loved it even more on the Murray River. I was 2.5 years older. It was very peaceful. I was by myself most of the time, and I didn't need to answer any questions. I just needed to move at my own pace.
And this is what, 1,500 miles or so?
Yeah, 1,500 miles, about 2,500 kilometers. And I was paddling for 2.5 months, so a solid period. And again, just like the skateboarding, every day was different. I was overcoming new hurdles. I'd not really spent a great deal of time on rivers before. And it was a beautiful trip. And I fell in love with water, and I fell in love with traveling by myself on that occasion. And I knew probably coming into that journey that I wanted to make something of a career and adventure. What that looked like, I didn't know, but I was starting to, I guess, find myself, understand who I was as an adult. I was 29. It took me a long time to work out exactly what it was that I needed to be a content, pleasant chap in this world. And I still got so super depressed after that trip. It was amazing. I really loved it. And that feeling of reaching the sea at the end of that journey was magic. There's a video on YouTube, and if you look at my face at the end of that film, you just see pure joy. I was in the Southern Ocean, and it felt incredible. And I like earning an accolade. I like, even if that accolade is just a feeling of satisfaction, and the more work you put into it, the harder it is, the better it feels. Mm-hmm. And I wanted life to be a series of these huge challenges, geographical or not, and to feel good, but them to be regular as well. I realized that even in that period between starting skateboarding and finishing kayaking, my level of kind of median behavior or personality, rather than here, which it was all the way through to that 25th birthday, it had slowly been raising. So this was normal. And then the highs were way up here, and the lows were sure lower than I'd ever felt. But rather than just kind of operating in this
gray zone,
life on a whole was so much better. And yeah, when I was depressed and something crap happened, I was right down there. But I picked up so much faster, and I was back here. And I guess the one big question I had after the Murray was, I want to do this again and again and again, because it makes me friggin' happy. It makes me a superhuman. But why should I do that and still be prepared to be depressed for months on end after each journey? And I guess that was my next big challenge, finding out a way to avoid that depression.
And we're going to go into that next. There's something I want to pick up, or I picked up on here, that I wanted to talk about, that I also found on my bike ride, and then the bike ride ended. You have found on each of your journeys, and it's something that adds to our confidence as a human being. It's, I guess, something that I have as a daily thing on this daily show here, which is you met an obstacle, and even in your most smooth sailing days, there's always some obstacle that comes up. In the beginning, those were the crap moments. After a while, they became I'm not inviting it in, I'm not saying bring it on, but they became the moments that no matter what, you're going to be able to overcome this. And it flips a switch in you that makes you feel capable of so much, so alive.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And as time's gone on, and I've done so many adventures and covered so many miles since that 25th birthday, that everything that happens in life is just a story. And quite often you can see something coming and make a decision to avoid that crap moment. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes life throws that curveball, and you get hit by a car, or you break a bone or something like that. And it stops everything in its tracks. And now I see everything as just part of the story. I accept this stuff and just move on as fast as I possibly can. And by just seeing everything, good or bad, but especially bad, as just part of the story, something amazing is going to happen from this, regardless of what it is, then it means you don't mope. It means you don't seek out pity. It means you don't dwell on the bad stuff. It just means, oh, that happened. That was meant to happen because you couldn't avoid it. And therefore, all right, let's just crack on. Let's just turn it into gold. And again, it's just that ability to adapt. And the more you accept that, the faster you adapt. And of course, experience pays as well. You go through, enough ups and downs, and you realize that however down you feel, however heartbroken you are, however much that broken bone hurts, you're going to pick yourself up. And you know what? If something happens and you die, you're dead. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to deal with it anymore. So, but kind of living thinking, oh, I need to avoid all of that stuff is just crazy. It just ends up meaning you do nothing.
I like you, Dave.
I like you too, Mick.
I like you very much. Woohoo! All right. So, go ahead.
No. I was just going to carry on rattling. I prefer your questions.
Well, let's rattle on then to Expedition 1000 and what this means to you, because you were trying to develop a way to live this way. But I'm thinking this mind shift, we could even use this mind shift, not that we want to all stay in a cubicle all of our lives, and for many of us, there's something so much more, but this mindset of being able to overcome, and that no matter what happens, I can handle this, and if the worst happens, I'm not here anyway, so I guess in a sense, I handled that too. That's freedom making, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. We're habitual creatures. So regardless of what we do, if we spend our time doing a lot of stuff, whether it's working in a cubicle, whether it's going on adventures, you get used to doing that thing. You get used to making the decisions. You get used to preserving that way of life. You get used to protecting the stuff that makes you feel secure. And after a while, it took me a good time, but after a while, I started feeling more comfortable not living anywhere, sleeping in my hammock in parks or on people's sofas, not having my own home, spending very little money, and therefore whatever money I did earn, using it to go away and have amazing experiences, which turned me into, most of the time, an even happier person. But at the same time, in between journeys, if I spend 3 or 4 months working at my laptop, building my website, sharing my stories, preparing presentations, making films, I get used to that way of life as well. And the longer I spend doing that, the harder it is to make that decision to go on another journey. So I think recognizing exactly who you are in any given moment, but also knowing that, or I guess having as many different experiences, big and small, as you can in the little time that we have on this planet, helps you understand exactly what decision you need to make next time you feel that way. And I've done an awful lot over the last 10 years, a huge amount, more than I guess a lot of humans ever go through, because they get stuck in a very similar way of life. And I definitely could have been one of them as well. And there's no good or bad. No one really cares about the next person to a degree. We all need to protect ourselves. We all make decisions that govern our own behavior and experiences for the rest of our life. And that needs to come first. If you don't look after yourself, then you just become bad company for the people around you, whether it's family, work colleagues, friends. So look after yourself first. Look after your own little corner of the planet. And then you become better company for everybody. And if everybody was better company, then we'd have more community back. But we tend to be very insular as humans now. And that's, I think, why our community has gone, especially in this over-urbanized world where we don't need to ask people for little jots of kindness. We just have our own little homes. We rush in and out of them. We go to work. We earn the money to pay for the homes. We rush back. We, cover ourselves and bang. And we don't need that community. Except we do, because if you hide away for so long, then you get, on the whole, you tend to get bitter and twisted and, spend your life bitching about other people on forums or whatever it might be.
It's why traveling, getting out there, I call it road magic, which is when you put yourself out there, you're going to run into just the right or wrong, just the right person at just the right time. There's going to be a conversation. There's going to be a synchronicity. And your whole perspective on everything changes, and you so look forward to the next person that's around the next bend. I think you say that the stranger around the next bend is just the next best friend waiting to happen, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, every stranger is just a friend waiting to happen.
Bingo.
And it feels good to talk to people. Rather than email somebody, call them up. If you can actually see them face to face, have that conversation in person, and the more of that you do, the better you feel. I think that's just a standard human thing. But going back to your original question, I wanted to preserve my way of life, but I also didn't want to have this constant depression after journeys. So Expedition 1000 was my way of dealing with that. And I figured that if I gave myself a long-term focus and something to work towards, something that really mattered, and something ultimately that was going to get me back to that place where I knew I was going to feel good time and time again, then hopefully it would pull me out of that depression. And of course it was just a theory until I put it into practice. But Expedition 1000 was this idea to do 25 journeys of 1,000 miles or more, and each one using a different form of non-motorized transport. So it would keep me doing new things. It would keep me learning new skills. Each journey would take me to a different part of the world and therefore test me in different ways, stretch me out in different psychological and physical ways. And bang, it was also a really long project. So I'd done the skateboarding and I'd done the kayaking. And now I needed to find 23 different new ways to travel 1,000 miles or more. And you know what? It's worked. I don't really feel down anymore after a trip because I've made this decision now. You know, it's a life project. It's not a career project. I don't really care so much about breaking world records or racing anybody or any kind of competition. This is my way of living life my way. And no one else can feel that way. You know, I have to do it for me first, and then I'll be that happy chap, which is good for everyone around me. So I just cracked on. You know, I made that project my own, and I started telling everybody about it, which you do if you discover something that's amazing for you and you have that smile through life. People gravitate towards you for whatever reason, but it's usually because they want to feel happy.
I like that you told everybody about it, because there's an expression I don't agree with, which is, if you make plans, God laughs. Which is, if you tell people about it, it's not going to happen. I think there's something about putting yourself out there and saying, I'm going to do this, that makes it more likely to happen.
Oh, for sure. And I think really you need to promise properly to yourself, be honest with yourself with everything that you do. And therefore, you know, that's your decision. But once you do start telling people through genuine excitement and meaning, for sure, then I think in a way, if that's your bond, then you're doing it for other people. For me, you know, just making a decision to go and do something for me is enough. You know, I'm going to go and do it. But if it excites me, and if I feel like that energy can then be pushed elsewhere a little bit more and maybe encourage someone else to go and do something similar, then that's why I tell people. But the most amazing stuff happens if you start, again, you're just talking to people. And I was talking to more people because I was more excited about life and the things that were going to come. And therefore, I started getting more back. You know, it's the universe rewards you if you make a decision. And, you know, people were saying, what about this way to travel? Or why don't you go here? Or I know this inventor who's just invented this, and he might like you to do 1,000 miles on his random hamster wheel that goes on water, or whatever it might be. And suddenly, even though not every conversation resulted in an action or an expedition, it was fun. You know, everything started to be fun. And in the meantime, in between expeditions, I was doing lots of little random projects as well, because I just wanted to be curious throughout life. I wanted to experience new stuff. I wanted to say yes more. I wanted to open as many doors as possible, have as many conversations as possible, make as many friends as possible, and, you know, ultimately keep me on that mean level of happiness, which was higher than it used to be. And that was it. That was, you know, it's not really rocket science. It's just do more stuff that makes you happy, and you're going to be generally happy.
There's something interesting in here, too, about some of the stuff that you do is, while we're talking about people, and you're this is fascinating. You plug in by unplugging, you charge up, and then you share that energy with the world. A lot of what you're doing is out there by yourself, which is recharging. You're putting the oxygen mask on you to the nth degree. You get charged up, and then you bring that back to others. There's some power in that solitude of being out there by yourself as well.
Oh, a huge amount. And I honestly don't know how it started translating itself into community and social stuff. But I think, you know, there's a lot of people who go off and do these journeys, and they're real hermits when they come home. You know, maybe they still have that post-expedition depression. Maybe they didn't find the way to defeat it. Maybe they're just naturally quiet or loners. I love spending time by myself. I'm perfectly happy. You could put me in a hut by myself for 3 months, and I'll be fine. But I enjoy my own company. And I think and I'm happy being alone. That's cool. But at the same time, as time has gone on, I realized that I hit this, after the first few adventures, I hit this kind of wall where I'd be talking about it, and now and then I'd be getting paid for giving talks. And the first few were just abysmal because I was just saying what I'd done. And that was that. We've all been in a situation where we've come back from a holiday and just said, "Hey, mate," or "Mum, do you want to have a look at my photo album?" Or, it's probably easier to understand if someone's just done it to you. One of your friends has come back from a beach holiday and they're like, "Do you want to look at my photos?" And you don't care. After a little while, it's nice that it's their photos and they had a good time, but you weren't there. You don't care about the beach hut that they had a drink in. You don't care about the lounger or the room they stayed in, because it's their experience, and it's their experience. It only matters to you if somehow the way they share that story can, I guess, set off some chemistry inside you. The way that they tell that story can relate to the person they're sharing the story with. And slowly I realized that it wasn't what I did that mattered at all. No one cares that I skateboarded across Australia. Nobody cares that I paddled the river or did anything that I've ever done. But they do care about how it makes them feel. And slowly I started just to think, all right, if I was in their shoes, what would I really care about? And it's the decisions that I took to get me into the place where I ended up doing that. The things that were hard, the hurdles that I overcame, the blockers, or whatever kind of current startup terminology you want to use to kind of explain that situation. So I started trying more and more to translate my experiences into theory, I guess. But ultimately, I'm just a human, just like everyone else. I'm pathetic at some things, and I'm good at other stuff. We're all in that situation, and I guess over the course of the last 10 years, I've managed to go from a situation which so many people are really familiar with. I spent my Monday to Friday doing something that made me want to throttle myself. I was an idiot for it. But then I got out of it. And then I battled all of this. How do I make more money? Not doing the thing that I'm trained to do, and or not trained to do in this case. And, how do I get over the fear of not having a house? But I want a house, I want a place to live. But slowly that feeling goes away if you don't think it's right for you, if it holds you back. And then, so I've been through all of this stuff, and now I get more satisfaction, or at least just as much satisfaction, from helping somebody else go from that stage of, oh man, life is hard, and I'm doing this job, and I know I shouldn't be doing it. It's not good for my soul. And seeing them and helping them go from there to this, I am an epic human.
Woohoo!
I love being able to help people. They need to help themselves more than I can help them, but kind of being a mentor, or just saying, this is how you're feeling and I get it, and this is what I did in that situation. Try it out. And I love that.
What does it mean then to say yes? And what is a yes list?
Well, simply to say yes means you're going to go and do something. So say yes more, which has been my motto for a decade, but I turned it into a social enterprise a couple of years ago because I realized that it had made a huge difference to myself. I started talking about it more in maybe 2013, 2012. In 2012, I swam down the Missouri River, and I didn't know how to swim when I started.
Yeah, I remember reading this, and I'm going, first month, only 180 miles. Second month is like 920 miles approximately, or something like that. I'm going, okay, there had to be a current involved, but something in the math doesn't add up.
Well, yeah, I mean, the top 180 miles was above a dam. But I was also really slow because I'd never swum more than 100 meters or so in my life before I jumped in the river. Again, I didn't train. I just thought I'd give it 2 weeks, nice and slow. And at the end of 2 weeks, if you do it day in, day out, you're full time. And yeah, at the end of a week, I was a pretty good front crawler because I was doing it 11 hours a day. There was no current, and I got to the dam and then zipped the last month. But that was a tough journey. But and it's been one of a bunch, but definitely the hardest. But I think this whole, it always comes back to me to, if I hadn't said yes to that, I simply wouldn't have done it. It's that simple. And I get so many people saying, "Oh, I need to say no more." And I just think, oh, you're an idiot. You're just telling me that because you want me to know that you're busy. That's it. And I think the more you say yes to stuff, the more you experience, and we've covered this already in some ways, the more you understand the next thing that you should say yes to, and the next thing that you should say no to. Every time we say yes, we say no to everything else in the world. So, if you want to look at glass half empty, I'm a no man because I say yes to a lot of stuff, and therefore I say no to everything else in the world. And I say yes probably more than most people on this planet. So I'm also the biggest no man in the world. But I'd rather concentrate on the stuff that happens because that's what matters. And yes, we need to understand the stuff that makes us feel bad, and we say no to that. But that's just obvious. And to me, I guess so is opening up these doors. You say yes, I'm going to go and paddle across Scandinavia. I've never been there before, but whatever. In 16 days, I'm going to go and paddle across Scandinavia from Oslo to Helsinki. And then you think, okay, what do I need to tick off? I make a simple list of stuff that I need to tick off in order to be able to do that. I need to get my kayak. Maybe I should have a map. At least have data on my phone so I can use Google to paddle. Need a tent to sleep in. That's about it, really, isn't it?
Hammock.
And then
you're definitely going to want the hammock.
And a hammock, of course. Yeah, let's not forget a hammock. And this stuff is kind of basic. You make a small list of things that you absolutely need, and the rest just works out. And just by proxy, by default of doing a trip like that, you end up seeing islands that you've never seen before and sleeping in between two trees that you just wouldn't have known existed. You end up getting taken in by a gorgeous woman who runs a cafe. And some people told her about you because they met you 3 days earlier, and it was a total random coincidence, but she happens to be next to the river, and therefore I was going to pass at some point. And suddenly, I'm just being given a donut by a woman who I've never met before, and she's another one of these people who smiles. And, you open one door, and then there's another two, and you open both of them at the same time, and before you know it, you're just in a room surrounded by doors all the time. And you get the choice of which ones to open and which ones not to go through. And life is beautiful that way. And through every single one, there's an experience. Sometimes it might not be as fun as the next one. And for me, I think starting at rock bottom, if I'd known this, I would have done it and probably started stuff off a lot quicker way back when I was in my early 20s playing PlayStation a lot. But you mentioned the yes list. I guess it's a bucket list as well, but a bucket list is motivated by death. And I hate that. So let's just call it a yes list. It's a bunch of stuff you want to say yes to. Write down a minimum of 50 things that are stuff that you've always wanted to do, places you wanted to go to, skills you've wanted to learn. Some can be small and you could do them in a couple of hours. Some have to maybe take a year of prep or planning or saving up for them or whatever it might be. But that list represents you. It represents the person you want to be. It represents things that will give you passion and happiness and satisfaction. And, we're in a position where life doesn't have to be hard. If you're surrounded by people who tell you that work has to be a struggle, that life should be hard all the time, get rid of them. Get them out of your life. Stop listening to them because they haven't experienced enough yet. We should be sparkling old people full of wonderful experiences and wisdom, and passing that excitement and joy and wonderment about life down to our youngest generation. And I'm sorry to say that on the whole our population is not bringing in new generations as we should. We live in a world full of fear and sadness and terror and uncertainty, and it's all human made. It's totally human-made because we've taken decisions our leaders have taken decisions, depending on the situation, which eventually has led us to this situation where we all heed everybody else's advice, especially if we haven't met them, more than we heed our own.
It's fascinating because I'm thinking of any of your journeys, and I'm sure it was dramatically there when you were going to skate across Australia, which is every single person who told you the plethora of reasons of why it can't be done, it shouldn't be done, you shouldn't try it, and it's going to be too dangerous, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on of why you shouldn't be living.
Yeah. But everyone's got some advice to the other person who's showing them up. Never listen to advice unless you ask for it. It's really that simple. The number of times I've been on a skateboard or a bike car or traveling in any given way, and there's someone who's never ever skateboarded from this town to that town, and they'll say, "Oh, that's going to be really tough for you." And then you get to the next town, that hasn't been tough at all. And people, ask advice of people who've done exactly what you're trying to do. And they're the only people who can advise you on that. Mm-hmm. But all the while, if you tell someone you're going to do something different, certainly different to you, but, if you tell a work colleague that you're about to quit, there's a good chance that, they'll raise some questions, asking why you're going to quit. But they're talking to themselves. If you tell someone you're going to go and skateboard across Australia, everyone's going to say, "You're ginger, you've got white skin, you shouldn't go to a hot country, it's full of poisonous animals, no one's done it before, it's impossible. What about Australian people? I heard that someone got stabbed in Australia once." They'll come up with just endless excuses, and they don't care. Just as if I went there and I did it, and I came back with all the photos, they still wouldn't care. They don't care. Everyone is trying to advise themselves, especially in this kind of situation. And ultimately, this is why, being really solid individuals is so, so important for the makeup of our future populations, and teaching kids how to be, really faithful to themselves, first and foremost, is super key. And I think adventure is a beautiful way to do that. It's not the only way that we can learn our personal capacity and experience all of this stuff, but it's a really, really good way to do it. And, I just think, man, if I could take everyone's hand just for an hour, I feel like the world would be a better place. And I'm not saying I'm Jesus. I'm definitely not saying that. I don't see myself as any kind of leader, but I feel really, really grateful for the fact that I made that decision back when I was in bed with my cat. And I decided just to have a little chat to her instead of give her some breakfast immediately. And so much changed. And I'm so thankful that I didn't listen to a huge amount of people in the last 10 years, because if I had, my life would be much more disappointing.
I'm so glad you had that talk with your kitty cat. So before we wrap things up, I've got a few quick questions to ask, and then just a wrap-up question or two. Tell us about, you broke your foot this winter, and it may have been one of the best things to ever happen to you.
Yeah, for sure. I was on journey number 12, so I've completed 11 of these 1,000+ mile journeys so far. And I was walking with my friend Leon, a big intended loop around the Dead Sea in the Middle East. So we'd walked half of the length of Palestine through the West Bank and then crossed into Jordan. I put my foot down and it really hurt. And a couple of hours later, I couldn't walk. And I got a stress fracture. It turned out I had 2 stress fractures. So I ended up coming back to the UK and pulling out of that expedition. It's the first time I've had to stop a trip for any reason before 1,000 miles. And yeah, just a few days later, I met the girl I'm quite confident that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with.
Woo!
Boom, victory. So, but I think just rewind a couple of days, I should have been incredibly disappointed that, I put a lot of time and effort and energy into organizing this expedition. Also, a bunch of money goes into this stuff as well, and commitment, and, you get some sponsors in and you can't fulfill your obligations to them. But on the whole, I just thought, I've broken my bone. I can't do anything about this now. And, there's nothing worse than letting pride get in the way of a right decision. And pulling out of the trip was completely the right thing to do. And I saw it from the very, very beginning as, this has just happened. There's no point in being disappointed about it. Frustrated, sure, but let's just turn this into something really good. So I met this awesome girl. Her name's Emma. And I'm actually in her bedroom right now.
How'd you meet Emma?
We haven't even talked about the Yes Tribe, have we?
No, we've got a lot to cover at a little time. We'll move quickly.
A year, point taken. Oh my God. A year ago, I decided to do a project to turn my Facebook audience into real people. So I invited them camping. Meet me under the clock tower at this train station at this time, and we'll go camping for a night. 19 people turned up. Over the course of the summer, hundreds turned out camping. Amazing stuff started to happen because suddenly we were all surrounded by a community of other people who were the type of people to say, yes, I'm going to go camping near London with a bunch of strangers. Therefore, they were the people who if you went and said I was going to skateboard across Australia, they wouldn't say you're going to die. They would say, amazing, how can I help? How can I support you? We had a festival in October called Yestival, and the Yes Tribe was born, and now we've got over 2,000 people, a lot of them in London, but we've got tribes popping up all over the world, a few in America, a few in Australia, on and on. And even though I was going to be in the Middle East, there was a Yes Tribe gathering in Scotland for New Year's. And because I came back early, I ended up just going up to that gathering and surprising them. And Emma was there, as were a bunch of my other brand new friends, less than a year old. Now we're in a position where this tribe is growing from strength to strength. Hundreds of new adventures have gone off. Charity projects are being set up. We're raising hundreds of thousands of pounds across the board. You know, people doing individual adventures, and we can't take full claim to them because every individual puts the work in for their own project. But amazing stuff is happening because we're creating a community of people who want to make the most out of life. We even bought a double-decker bus a couple of weeks ago, and we're converting that into an amazing creative working space.
I love that, hub. The Yes Bus.
It's called the Yes Bus. You know, we're looking at a Yes Boat in London. All this amazing stuff is happening. And quite simply, it's this combination of getting people together, being surrounded by positive people who are the type to support you through your decisions rather than be the gremlins on the shoulder saying, you probably shouldn't do that because it's going to show me up. And then getting outside more, getting out of the city, being the wild animals that we're supposed to do within reason. It's incredibly powerful. And simply, you know, these folks are doing more, they're experiencing more, they're putting themselves in a better position to say yes to the right things down the line, and basically live a life that's more sustainable and adaptable for themselves. Woo-hoo! And yeah, and it's that woohoo moment. But at the same time, you know, it's a long road. I think it's hard thinking, man, you know, we've got 2,000 people out of, 7.5 billion on the planet or whatever it is. But we're making our own little dent, and that's awesome. And everybody creates their own little ripple. I guess that's all we can do. You know, we can throw as many stones as we like, but let's throw the skimming type and make a lot of ripples and make them positive.
Beautiful. So from there, tell us about Uganda and the River Nile real briefly. This seems to have a special place in your heart.
I recently went back to Uganda. A couple of friends who I met, I guess, through the Say Yes More community. They came to a talk that I gave a while ago, and then, you know, decided to go off and do some adventures, and at some point ended up setting up a marathon in Uganda, and they did the second one this year, a couple of months ago, or about a month ago actually, and they asked me to go out and make a film about it. And it was so good being back there, because after school, on this gap year that I mentioned right at the beginning of our conversation, I spent the best part of 18 months out in Uganda, and it was really eye-opening for me. And the fact that you can go to a place that's so different and people live in such a different way, and I'd say most of them are, you know, far below us in terms of their financial wealth, but so far above us, and us being, you know, kind of just typical Westerners, so far above us in terms of just general spirit and ability to enjoy life at its most simple level. And it's just such a pleasure going back there. This event ended up being the biggest single fundraising event in Uganda's history. They raised over 180,000 pounds, which is just an amazing effort considering just two people decided to do this thing a few years ago. It's another example of make a decision, make it happen, and amazing. So many people get influenced. Yeah, and the Nile runs through Uganda. You know, the source of the White Nile comes out of Lake Victoria, and I went back to exactly the same rock below Murchison Falls 15 years after I last went there. My mum was there at the time. She took a photo of me on this rock, and I got my friend Tamsin to take a photo of me on the same rock 15 years on. I was hoping that I hadn't aged a bit. It turns out I have. I've aged considerably. But so much has changed in those 15 years, and it was just a reminder that I'm very, very glad about all those decisions that I made. I made so many mistakes along the way as well, and you know, I'm so far from perfect, but I don't think we should strive to be perfect as humans. I think we should just strive to make the most of our time, be good company for everybody around us, and, you know, try and slot as much in as we can.
Beautiful. From there, question we like to ask all of our guests before the end, which is, what brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Oh, God, that's really tough. There's a few things on a level. Waking up beside a woman that I know I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, being in the middle of a huge river on a paddleboard and looking around and there's no one else there, and just being able to laugh at the fact that a fish just jumped out of the water, and seeing the huge smile of a friend who's just come back from an amazing adventure, having been with them from the very beginning of their thought process. I think those three things kind of sum up the stuff that I really love in life.
Beautiful. Thank you. Where can people go to find out more, find out about Say Yes, Yes Tribe, and everything that you have to offer?
My website, davecornthwaite.com, just has all of the stories from the last 10 years since I decided not to feed my cat and think about myself a bit more. SayYesMore.com is the home of the Yes Tribe. It's a place where you can find out about Yestival, which is our festival near London in October. We're going to have about 500 people there this year. It's going to be incredible. And the Yes Tribe has its home on Facebook. Have a look, just type in the Yes Tribe and you'll find it all there. But ultimately through davecornthwaite.com and sayyesmore.com, you'll find links to all of the other important stuff. Beautiful.
And I feel called to ask, exploring mindset.
Exploring mindset. I set up with a good friend of mine, Emily, a while ago now, back in 2012. And every single year we put on an expedition in a remote place. This autumn it's going to be in the Mississippi River. And for a week we travel under our own steam. We'll be paddling big canoes between September 25th and October 2nd. And along the way, we hold workshops and discussions about the important stuff, the stuff that really means something to us, that's hard to have in the life that we usually live. And it's really, it's for people who are thinking about a big transition, changing job, changing lifestyle, changing career or vocation. And we help you kind of through at least get to the grips with the big decisions that you need to make. I think it's really important never to make a really life-changing decision in a room. So we take people right out into the remotes south of Memphis. Come and join us. We've got a few places left. Have a look at exploringmindset.com.
And though you don't have any kids yet, any words of wisdom you would give for parents with kids or for their kids?
Yeah, children are not an excuse to stop living. If anything, it's the very, very opposite. I think some of the happiest people that I've met have kids, but they've had adventures with them. They've used their kids as a reason to, that's what I was like as a kid. Let's not forget that. There's a wonderful family called the Meeks. Have a look at Do Try This at Home on Facebook. And 3 years ago, they quit their jobs as teachers, Kerry and Tim, and they took their kids, Amy and Ella, at the ages of 6 and 8, off to start doing adventures. And these kids, at the age of 10 and 12 now, are the most rounded children you will ever meet. They're easier to have a conversation with than most adults. So if you've got kids, take them camping. Teach them new stuff. Take them traveling as much as possible. Don't give them an iPad. You're the better parent. And, go on adventure. Give your kids a chance to say yes to whatever they want to. And don't hold them back. They're a different generation to you, just as my parents were a different generation to me. Don't parent them as though they're growing up in the age that you grew up in. Just give them the chance to be who they should be.
Beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any last words of wisdom for everyone out there?
Say yes more. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a fantastic joy, and I hope it's challenging everybody out there to say yes more. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, absolutely say yes more, and shine bright. Woohoo! Woohoo! Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, mate. I really enjoyed that.
This was a lot of fun. What's your next adventure?
I'm cooking something up, another 1,000 miles in November and December. It may well involve kite surfing a long way.
Very, very cool. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe, see the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!